Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to Pro Cycling Manager 2021, and we are in another tutorial. Today it is climbing. It is a climbing tutorial, so how to deal with the mountains. And it turns out that, well, there's a lot of things to cover. There's 5 different types of mountain stages that you could deal with. There are 5 different types of strategies on how to tackle said mountains and said stages. So we have a lot to get over. Let's get straight into it. We are riding with, currently anyway, Israel Startup Nation on an incredibly difficult stage where we begin with the first climb up the Col de Peyrasourde. Let's get into the first of 2 strategies that we're going to cover here early on. First one is last man standing. Now, it's early in this stage, and there's a lot of climbs to come. So right now, there isn't a ton of tempo in terms of how hard we're riding. But this 13-kilometer climb at 7% average gradient is hefty. It's a big, big climb. And even though we're not pushing heavily, you can already see that there is a lot of fatigue showing up in the legs already. And we've just gone under 10k to go, meaning we're only 4k in. And looking at the profile, the earliest part of the climb is the easiest. So this climb is going to be pretty tough. And while we have 180 riders in the peloton right now, you can guarantee that that number is going to dwindle down before the end of even this very first climb. This first strategy we're looking at is last man standing. And last man standing, what it does is it takes, and we'll take a quick look at our team here. It takes your best riders. In this case, you have Chris Froome, 78 base, 80 with the race day condition bonus for his mountain climbing today. Of course, in the mountains, it is your mountain rating, it is your stamina, it is your resistance that are going to matter most. Downhill will matter a little bit. Hills rating can matter a little bit under certain circumstances. But you have Chris Froome, you have Michael Woods, you have Dan Martin and Hagen, who are all 80 plus on their mountain ratings, at least today. 4 other riders in Nealons, who's only a 73, DeMarquis, who's a 75, Greipel, 68, even though he's got a +3 race day condition, and Hermans at 78. Weaker riders, and as this is a Grand Tour, we have 8 present. We're taking the 4 weakest riders and using each of them to protect one of the 4 strongest riders. We again take a look at these 8 riders and see what's going on as we are now halfway through the climb. You can see that our weaker riders have expended far more energy than the 4 riders that they are protecting. Now, there's 2 reasons why this is happening right now. One reason, these 4 riders are better climbers. Therefore, they climb at an easier speed. Therefore, their heart rate is not climbed quite as high. You can see 162 versus 182. And therefore, they are climbing a bit better. Okay, that's a natural reason for this, as we're seeing a little bit of an attack here, but I'm not worried about that right now, as it's just a tutorial. But the second reason, a rider that is offering protection is going to work harder. Hermans is a great example of this. Hermans has a 78 mountain with 78 resistance and 76 stamina today. Those are very good ratings. Is it the same as what Froome has right now? Okay, not quite. 80 mountain, 75 stamina, 75 resistance. He has better stamina and resistance. That's going to cover that gap a little bit. Now, 80 mountain is better than 78. But not significantly. Hermans, you would expect comparatively to Froome, is going to work a little bit harder. But look how hard Hermans is working right now. Now, he's protecting Dan Martin, not Froome. But a rider offering protection is going to work harder to protect the rider. Meaning that the protected rider is going to conserve a little bit of energy. And therefore, you could see our 4 riders all fatigued going over the Peyrasourde. But they still have roughly half their energy, and their heart rate was low enough that soon after going over the top, they begin to recover. So, the last man standing philosophy takes your weakest riders and protects your strongest riders. And what you're going to end up seeing at the end of the day is your stronger riders are going to survive a bit longer. And then as you go on through subsequent climbs, and you can already see we have one such case. Greipel has been dropped. He is no longer in the group, as he was the weakest climber, so he expended energy the fastest. Others barely making it through there. You can see Neelands is still really struggling at this point. What you do is you start covering it down. Neelands, we're about to hit a climb, and he's out. I'm just going to go ahead and rule him out of what we're doing at this point. We now have 6 riders left here at the front. What we do is we look at these 6 guys remaining. Hagen's an 80-80 today. Wow, that's good. Martin is an 81-75. Woods, 80-79. Froome, 80-75. Okay, that is the weakest one remaining. So what we're going to do now is we have 3 guys. Neelands is trying to protect Martin, but that's not actually happening. So what we're going to use is Chris Froome now to cover down Martin. Hermans cover on Hagen, make sure that we're covered there. And we now have a different sequence. So we start shrinking the group down further and further. And now a previously protected rider who is still in a very good condition right now as we go into the next climb, which is another 7 kilometers. It's shorter, but it's 8%. It's going to do a lot of damage. And you see that nobody is fully recovered. T. Marquis, I would use his gel here. I would have done that a while ago. You can see Neelands going backwards. But one by one, you shrink the group down. And those stronger climbers that were protected are now in better shape than they would have been if they were riding solo. And that way they can protect the leader that much longer. And you whittle it down until you get to your last couple of guys. And now your second strongest climber, who's been protected all this time and should hopefully still have a bit left in the tank, can now protect your best rider for as long as possible. And that is pivotal when you are a team that has, say, a top 10 objective, but realistically you're probably only top 20 in terms of strength, and so you're trying to squeeze that rider into the top 10 and get more out of them. Having a number of mediocre support climbers can go a long way towards survival for that rider and getting them into that unexpected top 10 result. Now, of course, that's a tactic that's going to play out over the course of an entire stage, but we're now going to go ahead and move on to our next tactic, which is survival mode. Survival mode can be done with riders offering protection, or it can be done solo, and the point of survival mode is to conserve energy as much as possible, hope for survival. This is a dangerous tactic, but when you have nothing else going for you, it is possibly effective. It can work out in your favor, but again, it comes with some risk. Here's the risk real quick. You can see now that Woods is blinking red, as well as Martin and Hagen. The reason for this is we're seeing this big acceleration. All of these riders are pushing tempo because Soler, Hindley, Ciccone, these guys have all attacked. And because they've attacked, there is a chase. With the increased tempo, riders are riding harder. Now, the better climbers can stay with that. But you're going to see a lot of riders towards the back dropping off. And we're seeing it right now. We just saw a group of about a dozen riders get dropped. I mean, way back here, you have Mark Hershey, McNulty, Quintana, a lot of Tarmate, a lot of really good climbers, really struggling at the back right now. Or at least in the middle towards the back end. What you can do with this survival tactic is you're giving less than the required effort. And in doing so, you drift backwards. that ultimately forces your rider to ride at a more conservative tempo, which hurts their position in the peloton. They're going to drift back. Now, the risk of that is if there's a split in the group. Even if you still have energy left, there's a split in the group, goodbye, you're not in the peloton anymore. Race can be over, can be done, just like that. And you can already see Woods was that front rider we were looking at. He's still hanging out pretty well near the front. But you can see Hagen, you can see Froome, you can see Martin have all drifted back quite a ways. And Dan Martin is just in the middle of the peloton right now. And we are seeing some splits. But in this case, these guys conserved a good chunk of energy. They're still here. They didn't get dropped. There are still 3 climbs to go on a stage like this one. And that energy that we just conserved could be massive in the climbs to come, especially where the descents are so fast that you don't actually recover a whole lot of energy. But again, this one comes with inherent risk, that inherent risk being as splits occur in the group, if you miss a split, you're done. So you've got to be careful on using it and how much to use it. If you drift back too fast, you could go straight out the back. If you aren't paying close enough attention, you can go straight out the back. If there's a split somewhere in the middle and you're caught in the back, goodbye. But again, in this case, we saw how it worked out. These guys did not ride anywhere near as hard as they could afford to ride, and it did pan out. It did work out where they all saved some energy for the climbs to come. And before we move on to another stage to demonstrate further principles, I wanted to take a moment cover the first stage type. And that is a type that has climbs, that has some big early climbs, and the whole strategy behind early climbs is survival. Either of your primary climbers or as many of your climbers as you can possibly preserve for the climbs to come later on in a stage. So the whole point about early is survival, because you can lose a race early on. You can get knocked back. You can lose a ton of minutes, but you cannot win a race. Those guys who attacked on this second climb, they've already been caught. They're not here. Ciccone and Aru are the only ones off the front, and that is because they just attacked yet again, and they're only 15 seconds ahead. You can see them right there. They, right now, are wasting a ton of energy and guaranteed would finish well to the back on a stage like this one. Meanwhile, you could see that I have now got 3 out of my 4 guys that are here in the peloton back to full energy, and Froome not doing too bad and just got water for us with 80 kilometers to go. Regardless of the outcome, success or failure, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the next tactic here. I would not do this under these circumstances. These 4 riders with 3 climbs yet to go and 2 even bigger climbs than this one, this would not work out long term. But I will go ahead and demonstrate how this tactic goes. Okay, I have 4 climbers left, so I will go ahead and use these 4. We have 10k to go on this climb at nearly 8%, so it's another mega climb. And you can see with a descent like that, where you have some undulation, you have some up down, there's not going to be as much recovery. And then you have a mega climb in the Tourmalet after that one. Again, this would not be recommended to do on this particular stage, but let's jump into what the next tactic is. Now, this is a tactic that you can use if you are among the favorites. You're one of the top 3 to 5 climbers that are out there. Not necessarily the best climber, but this is one you would want to use when you have a large number of support climbers. If you still have, say, 6 climbers left, and they're pretty good and they're pretty healthy, and I do have 3.5 right now in terms of strength. So for that, yes, we're in okay shape, and that's why I can go ahead and demonstrate it here. What you're going to do with this tactic is you're going to pick your best rider. In this case, that's Martin, but I think Woods might be a little bit better off, even though he is ever so slightly weaker on his mountain rating. He has a much better stamina resistance. I think he's going to hang around a bit longer, and so does Hagen, for that matter. So we're going to switch the order around based on race day condition. If you were talking about GC, Dan Martin is probably the guy you're riding for under these circumstances, and Woods is the one leading him out. And then Froome is working as a domestique, and that kind of fits the role. I'm going to go ahead and gel up right away for Chris Froome. We're going to go effort up. Now, 70 is not going to be strong enough, but I don't know exactly what threshold we're going to need right now. Let's try 80 and see what happens here. But we are going to do a sprint train, or a la sprint train. Only this case, it's a mountain train. Now, we're going to try to get these guys following one another, and Woods is still struggling a little bit to find his wheel. I want to get everybody kind of set and in position before we turn it on too much. Okay, and now that we have that, we're going to speed up a little bit because Froome has not gotten us out front. Van Aert is riding harder, and you could see how things are not going well by being in the middle. Izagirre starts to go back, and we drift further back, so that's not going to be useful. What is important to keep in mind as you're doing something like this is your effort level. At 85 and below, when you are at a 3% gradient or higher, you use 100% mountain rating. So anything over 3% is going to use either your mountain rating or your hill rating or a combination of the two. When effort is 85 and below, it's all mountain. At 95 and above, it's all hills. So it's punchy. In between 85 and 95 is going to use a combination of the two, as we're seeing an attack here, and this is why I wanted to be a little bit further forward and avoid this, but Jumbo-Visma is doing what I'm wanting to do in a very dangerous way. They are riding quite hard right now. But you can see Martin, Hagen, Woods aren't hurting quite as bad by following Froome, and this is one reason why this tactic can be effective. I mean, this is a pretty hefty tempo, and we are just now, as Dumoulin is fading, getting into that front position, though Froome is just about out of energy himself, and now he is. So we're going to go ahead and proceed into our three strongest guys with 3K left to go on this climb. And what I was talking about before with that combination, if you go 86, you're going to use 90% mountain rating, 10% hill rating. Now, in the case of Dan Martin, that's going to be good because he's lightning fast on hills. If you go 90, you're using a 50-50 split. So an 81 and an 82 would be an 81.5. So let's go ahead and turn up the tempo a little bit. Froome actually led on the front. Isn't it amazing? The multi-Grand Tour winner has, well, struggled late in his career after that horrific crash. You see just how quickly we are decimating the peloton. In fact, we just left it to 3 riders. We have split the field. Port not able to keep up. Micah, Dumoulin, you can see how they're struggling. And we are now riding solo, pulling away from these guys, thanks to the efforts of Martin. But you can see how Hagen and Woods, they have nothing left, and there's still, a couple climbs to go after this. So this is a very dangerous move. However, we just pulled a minute and a half on the peloton. And if we were able to recover going forward, this could be a big move. I mean, 3 teammates like this, these 3 guys going clear, could amount to something. It absolutely could amount to something, but Martin's going to have to keep working. Now, this is one of those places where a sprint train is very effective. We only have 50 riders left in the peloton. In fact, it's already down to 41 just since the start of this climb. For this UAE squad, every single rider is still up here, and they need to find their way back up here. Formulo is done, so we need to get on to Micah. We need to gel up for these two. And this is where we get into a couple of the other tactics and one of the other styles. We had a couple early climbs, which was all about survival through there, and that went well enough, as we need to really pick up the pace here with Micah as we're a little bit too far down the order. Honda Costa, Dombrowski also struggling. We're going to be right into De La Cruz. We're down to 22, chasing 6, by the way. I mean, there's our 6, and then we're right at the front of a peloton of just 22. So we're going to gel up. De La Cruz is going to take over, and he's going to climb his pace. And we have 6 kilometers to climb. That is still quite a ways, and Pogacar is a little bit off his wheel. He's going to have to spend a little bit of energy to cover that off. There we go. And now it's just 7, 6 chasing. A couple guys getting back on the wheel as Caruso is struggling. So with 4K to go, Pogacar would be the one to do something. Now, the next tactic is right now, guys are actually making up ground. They are covering it off. The next tactic is to just straight up attack. You do not want to ever go just full gas on a climb. Ever. It's going to use a ton of energy and fast. You want to do just enough to get off the front, create a gap, and then you continue climbing at your pace. Now in this case, Pogacar sits back up, and he's going to have to try to cover off the ground and make up time on Lopez and Carthy. He is on a -2 today, so this is not your normal Pogacar type ride. And there's still 4 guys off the front, which is a little worrying, as we, with just a tiny bit of energy, are unfortunately going to have to just try to hang on. But you can see how easily we left that group behind and left them to their own devices to try to pull, to chase. And as the strongest natural climber, Pogacar keeps up with these guys easily and doesn't actually run out of energy, even though he is very, very tired. The attack can be effective. When you are weak, though, minus negative race day condition, everything's just going to be a little bit tougher. Ideally, what you want to do on a downhill finish, if you're able to go for the win. See how we have the top right here? Somewhere within the last few hundred meters to where we are right now at the very, very latest, if you had the energy. If you were the front group and not chasing a couple of others, but even if you are, what you want to do is, if you have some energy, these last 500 meters is where you want to attack and gain just a little bit of separation from you to the group behind you. Because on this type of stage, the AI isn't necessarily the smartest, and you can actually stay away. You can keep a gap, and it works a lot like that in real life too. Now, the second thing to do here is, you see how we are very quickly recovering from these guys. We could be bold and try to gain separation and try to attack yet again. Through attacking, we might be able to open up a gap on these two and leave them behind. You can see we have a little bit of a flat section here. The problem with trying to attack on the descent is these guys can actually keep up with you, and the best way to attack is coming out of a corner, and you might be able to leave them behind. But you see right now, that's just not happening. It's just not happening. We're trying to pull away from them. This is helping to keep the 5 chasers behind, but it's not allowing us to actually gain separation on these 2. It's also helping catch up to the front guys, but again, it's not actually working. So if you attack just before the peak, that's where things tend to go a little bit better for you, and you're able to actually get something out of it. Now, our attack actually just ended through longevity. We don't have any time left, and he finally sat up. You can see as we push for the end of the stage, we never could leave this group behind. We finished right in the middle of the 2, but we did stay ahead of the guys that were chasing us, and they were chasing pretty hard, and you had a very, very strong Almeida trying to close us down there, and we were able to keep him at bay. But again, -2 race day condition always makes that a little bit harder, and as we're trying to show off the train, we weren't in the natural position that Pogacar would normally be in, which is right near the front, where you want him to attack from there and not be following a bunch of teammates from the middle of the peloton. Now, this is the type of mountain stage that is really difficult to gain time on, but absolutely can be done. Not necessarily against the best contenders, but against somebody either caught out, having a bad day, or against the entire midfield and opening up large gaps against the midfield. Now, if you have a team like Jumbo-Visma, you are in fantastic shape to try to make something happen. Now, I'm going to send somebody to get water real quick, and we're going to hang on in the meantime as we begin the 1 mega climb on the day. But then you have a long flat section before you get to whatever type of finish you have. Now this one finishes on a little cobble sector right at the end of it, but otherwise it's very, very flat along the way. Now I should have gotten water already with Bowman, but I wasn't paying attention to that as I was preparing for this. Normally that would be something you'd want to focus on quite early on, but he is going to just about make it up there. Roglic, the only one. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now, as we've conserved some energy thus far, is we're going to use that sprint train tactic, as this is the strongest climbing team here. In fact, Bowman is the weakest guy. We're going to go straight into gel, and he's going to push as hard as he can for as long as he can. And then we're going to kind of line up behind him. I think Foss is probably the next in line. And then maybe... No, Chris Fike is looking really good today. Dumoulin is actually one of the weaker ones around. Though with that resistance and that huge bonus that he has today, it's hard to look past that. George Bennett's the next one. There you go. Roglic is not actually looking very good with his negative race day condition. And we're going to put him further down the order. Again, if you were in a Grand Tour and he was the guy you're riding for, then you ride for him regardless. But that's not the case in this, especially when you have such an abundance of guys. I think Vingegaard's the one you need to be riding for. He's looking really strong, 79. But as we begin this climb, I'm going to push Bowman as hard as he can. He's already used up all of his red bars, so he is using yellow bar. You can see he's doing just enough to kind of push gently towards the front. We're going to get Foss ready in the meantime. And there's already a lot of fatigue because we've already gone over 2 big climbs, and there was a lot of tempo. And I mean, this is Bowman going maximum effort as we go to set ourselves up. But with 15k to go, he now takes over and is very low on energy. So we're going to back off a bit for Foss. 85 is a good climbing because that's 80 mountain for him. So that's going to put a lot of hurting into the legs of the rest of the guys as we're halfway up the climb. We're also still coming back at a breakaway group. Dumoulin is actually looking a little bit weaker than he should be right now. So we might not actually be riding for him as Foss is nearly out of energy. So we'll have him relieved here shortly by George Bennett. George Bennett is a bit punchy, so we're going to push on. Now, the next tactic, it can be used solo or any number of riders that you have, but we are essentially employing it right now. And what the tactic is keep up if you can. You ride at such a pace that just makes life really difficult and just whittles away the field. And you can see, even within our own team, we have done an absolute ton of damage to our guys, and you can guarantee that it's doing a ton of damage behind us. And it is, as the peloton finally blows up. And now we have a peloton of just 13 riders. I'm going to keep Koos going on at 99. He is an 83 mountain rating, so even without the energy, him at a 99 is pretty dang fast. And we have just 12 riders. It's a small peloton, now 15. I mean, it's yo-yoing a little bit. Of course, we're not climbing at a maximum pace. Actually, I can't believe that's coming back up as high as it is. I expected a few riders to latch back on, but not this many. The thing about this type of stage and this type of catch me if you can and just ride as fast as you could get somebody to ride, even though, again, he's lacking the power, Koos, on the front, but he's still working. What it's doing is it's greatly diminishing the peloton. It's down to 43. Now, here's why 43 is probably a better number than 6, which we had, I think, momentarily. The reason why that number doesn't work is you have such a long, after the descent, you have such a long flat section to the finish that group is never going to hold off a chasing group, especially a chasing group of 30 or 40 riders. So having a group of 43, by the time we get to the flat, there are going to be some team members of some teams, us included, that can actually relay, that can work, and keep that group away from all the chasers, and have multiple minutes to the chasers, and rule out anybody who missed. So if we look up, you have Ciccone off the back. You have, our guys, Port, Uran, Bardet, Sosa, Gegenhardt, Nibali. I mean, you have a lot of strong climbers here. De La Cruz, Woods, all off the back. Soler off the back. That is a number of outside contenders. So a stage like this, you're not going to necessarily beat the best guys unless they have terrible race day condition. But a stage like this and a tactic like what we've just employed to make this climb super hard but still have 5 teammates here, we're going to be in a situation where those riders that are off the back are never going to catch us. And we're going to keep them away. And so you're eliminating a bunch of leader outsiders. This is the kind of stage where it's really hard to win solo or small group. It's just not bound to happen. But you can set up a scenario such as this where if you do the keep up if you can and you make it hard, it is going to lead to pretty sizable gaps. And you are going to catch out some outside leaders. And you can see there's quite a few here. I mean, there is a good 6 to 8 outside contenders that are in the chase groups that are a minute 40 behind or a minute and a half behind. That really, really changes the prospects of this race going forward. Now, the main contenders, oh yeah, they're still right there. I mean, you're still looking at most of the main contenders right here. But if the next strongest guy is Thibaut Pinot, that's a big step down. And there are definitely a handful of contenders that have missed out on this. And that is why a tactic like this one can be effective on this type of stage amongst a Grand Tour. Now, for solo stage, this isn't going to amount to much, but what it can amount to is if I have 5 riders and other teams are all down to 1 or 2 at the end of the stage, we could have a real shot at winning a stage like this. Reason being, we get some recovery in those legs on the descent, and other teams contribute to keeping tempo up towards the end of the stage. We can proper sprint train, and take whoever's got the best legs, whoever's the fastest sprinter, and you've got a chance at winning the stage itself as well, despite still being in a group of about 40 riders. Now, the last tactic that we have not covered, or last type of mountain stage that we have not gone over yet, is the mountaintop finish. And the mountaintop finish, well, the only thing I can say about that, and I'm not even going to demonstrate with any stages to show you, but what I will say is that the 5 tactics that we've just covered, those are what you have at your disposal. Now, the one tactic that's never going to lead to a win among those is that survival one, where you drift back. You're not going to win drifting back on a mountaintop finish. But the last man standing, protecting your riders down to the very, very end, that could set you up for a potential win, especially if you've conserved enough energy in your leader. Meanwhile, a sprint train style can absolutely set you up because your leader is following behind this, and the others could get isolated a little more quickly. And if they aren't protecting their leaders, things can happen. So we can and often will see something occur in that type of scenario. Sprint train, leaving everybody behind, pushing tempo, getting it down to the last handful of riders, and then using an attack or the keep up if you can with your strongest climber. The keep up if you can, I only ever use that if you literally have the strongest guy around. And it's great for youth races in pro cyclist mode, where you have a climber, you have somebody with a high mountain rating, and you're surrounded by guys that are like 10 points below you in mountain ratings. You go early climbs, and you go to the front, and you climb at your tempo, and then everybody's just like huffing and puffing, trying to keep up with you, and then all of a sudden a gap opens up, and you're riding solo. That one does work. One absolutely works, because then you don't have to waste energy attacking. And the attack is what can be so painful under those circumstances. All right, folks. Well, good luck with your mountain races. They are difficult to get a hang of. They are so challenging. And I play on the hardest difficulty, which makes them that much harder because everybody else has bonuses to their stamina resistance that you don't get with your team or your cyclist. So It could really, really make the mountain stages super tough, where certain other things like sprints kind of carry a more normal difficulty when you're playing on the hardest difficulty level in this game. But anyway, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Also, in the comments, do mention what you'd like to see next in terms of tutorials. And I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.